All right. So I'm here with KLEW Sports Director Armen Araradian. Armen, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, no worries.
So my first question is, how did you get interested in the sports journalism field?
Ever since a young age, I've always liked sports, obviously. Played sports growing up. Um, and it sounds weird, but I actually started college as a biology major, kind of just failed my first chemistry class, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to be able to do this. If I can't even pass general chemistry, I'm not going to be able to do all these weird chemistry, biology, whatever. So I got to thinking, and it was kind of like, okay, I like sports, and I like to talk a lot. What's the one career that you can kind of do both of those and not be too big of a pain in? So it just kind of started as like let's give this a shot, and it ended up working out.
And what was kind of like your first opportunity at making that dream come true? Was it at University of Oregon?
Yeah, so I actually transferred into Oregon, and I think it was like my third, fourth week, just signed up for Duck TV, and just started doing stuff with them. That was like the first real sports journalism thing I ever did. Before internships, so on and so forth, jobs. That was kind of the first thing I did.
What kind of training did you have with social media in particular?
Um, I wouldn't say honestly there was a ton of training in the fact that hey, someone's sitting you down and actually showing you this is what you do. More the training that I would say I got is just following other people on social media and seeing, hey, what type of stuff are they doing? What can I learn from that? I mean, I followed a couple of the people at that time who are at like KZI, KVAL, stations in Portland, so on, and kind of just said, okay, this is what they're doing when they're when I don't know, when the Ducks score a touchdown. Like this is the style of tweet, or hey, this is what they're doing to break stories, stuff like that. I wouldn't say there's a specific type of training I got. It's just more just watching stuff or looking at stuff that other people are doing and just kind of learning on my own.
And can you talk about your job at KLEW and how you specifically use social media there?
Yeah, so my job, I anchor and report 5 days a week from Monday through Friday, and as needed on weekends if I need to. And then it's also leading the team whenever something pops up, and I have to send someone to it. Sports wise, I'll do it like Friday Night Football is a big example. I'll get expanded team that day and kind of just plan out the entire day around myself and them. I'll assign people to games and so on. And as for social media, I mean, especially Twitter for me Twitter is basically everything for me. It's where I find stories. I message people on there. I set up stories on there. I mean, probably about an hour ago, I set up a story with a guy that's got signed by the Kansas City Royals, who went to college in this area. So I use Twitter all the time. Facebook, I use a little bit less. It's really just to reach out to people that I can't reach on Twitter. I can't DM someone or something like that. But without Twitter, I would have a hard time just finding stories because there's just so many things on Twitter, especially sports-wise, that make it super easy just to get stories out of.
Right. So how does KLEW specifically utilize social media? Like what kinds of sports coverage do they do? Are they do they tweet a lot of breaking news out, or is it mostly like TV that they do that?
Are you saying the sports department or the news department?
Like the sports department.
So the sports department, I mean, I, for the most part, run into, like, we have a KLEW sports Twitter account. I'll be honest, it's really not used too much, just because the actual staff members use their own Twitter and then we'll just retweet each other. But I mean, on my Twitter, like, I'll do anything. If there's a final score, tweet it out. Highlights, tweet it out. A story after it goes to air, cut the video, tweet it out. I mean, pretty much anything sports-worthy or newsworthy when it comes to sports, I'll tweet it out. To me, it doesn't really matter if it's national news. Like, I just tweet out the Cam Newton stuff, or retweeted, I think it was Schefter or something like that.
You were a video production intern with Go Ducks.
Mm-hmm.
How did you utilize social media for that? And was that kind of like was that your first internship?
Yeah, so with that, I'm trying to remember. So with that, we did a lot of the press conference stuff, and we would get control of the Oregon Twitter accounts, whether it was the Go Ducks main, let's say it was a football thing, the Oregon football account. It was volleyball, you get the volleyball account, and it's like during press conferences, we would run the stream for that. During games, we would be the ones, we would be sent that graphic, like let's say Oregon volleyball wins 3-1. We would get that graphic that says 3-1, blah, blah, and then we'd take it to Twitter and, write the tweet, whatever it was, and do that type of stuff. It wasn't a whole lot of social media work with that. The amount that we got, it wasn't hard. It was just tweeting out like scores every now and again and running a feed, which is super easy. But what we did get was helpful.
In what way was it helpful, like to your career specifically?
Just kind of learning how to play to an audience. Obviously, the entire audience who pretty much is going to be following Go Duck, the at Go Ducks handle, they're going to be Oregon fans, or they're going to be caring in some way or another about Oregon. So it's kind of like learning how to get them to view your tweet. I think a way that translates to this job is, obviously for me, I didn't go to Washington State or anything like that. I wouldn't say I'm a Washington State fan, but you also have to know how to cater to those fans. And that's what I think the biggest help was with that. It's like, I know how to form a tweet to where they'll want to see it, even though I'm not a fan by any means.
How would you say that your experience with Duck TV social media and tweeting out is different than what you do with KLEW?
Yeah, so good question. It definitely is different in the sense that everything at this present job, I feel like, is moving like 100 miles an hour, 24/7, 365. Duck TV was maybe going 25 miles per hour with it. So it's like let's say when Mark Helfrich got fired, that day was complete, utter, whatever you want to call it, at Duck TV. But, we sent out like one tweet and then it's just like reformat things and shows and everything. Whereas we were at the press conferences, everything like that with Rob Mullins, blah, blah, blah. But from a professional sense, like let's say let's say if Mike Leach would have been fired. Let's say that happened in the middle of at the end of the season. I would have probably had, honestly, at least 40 tweets that night, just tweeting out every little thing I can, maybe DM a player that I follow, get his take on it, DM an alum, a former player, get their thought on it. Let's say the AD here is going to be doing a press conference, get the stream up on Periscope or whatever, set your camera up maybe and feed it back to your Twitter, quoting him, blah, blah. Whereas like Duck TV, it was just like, okay, three tweets, we're done. That's what I think the biggest difference was. Social media, it's not like at Oregon, as far as I remember, we didn't have a class for like social media journalism. So it was kind of just like, okay, we've tweeted about it. It's not, hey, we've done our job tweeting about it. That's what I think the main difference was. Here, I feel like if there's something big happening, tweet until you've got every little thing done about it. Whereas Oregon, it was just, if you tweet it, it's good enough. Mm-hmm. In Duck TV, not Oregon in general.
Right. So obviously, COVID-19 has kind of affected everything that journalists do. And you talked about how much stuff goes into a breaking news story. So how has the lockdown affected all that work that you do? Has it like reduced the amount of things you do, and has it increased the amount of things you do on social media?
I wouldn't say there's been an effect on social media per se, because I mean, I might have less tweets because I've seen that in my analytics. There's less tweets, just because for games, let's say I'm tweeting 5-6 times per game for a baseball game. Let's say now I'm losing that 5-6 tweets per game and maybe tweeting 3 times a day because there's no game going on. As far as like amount of work totally, I mean, you would think with like no games going on, it's less work. It's a total opposite. It is so much more work. There's maybe like times where like, for March Madness, yeah, those 3 weeks of March is gonna be less work because I'm not traveling, I'm not staying up till all hours of the night. That in a sense is easier, but there's no games, so you have to find something to fill content with. And what a lot of that is do stories. So the news reporters, what they do is they usually do a package and 2 VOSOTs a day. And what I'm used to a lot is maybe a VOSOT or 2 a day and like a lot of highlights, stuff like that. I'll maybe do a package like twice a week or something. Now I'm doing packages every day. And with that, it goes into a lot of planning, interviews, trying to figure out how you get film when you can't go in person, because my company policy is don't go in person if you don't have to. So that's been a lot of that work, just trying to plan a billion things. And then, obviously there's a ton of stories out there, but it's just being able to find them all and dedicate time to doing it and so on. So it's actually been more work throughout COVID-19. I wouldn't say it's hard. That's where a lot of the social media has helped out with me. Just when there's no stories, I can't just look at my calendar and say, okay, there's a game tonight at 7:00. I've got to find a story, which means hop on social media, maybe text some people, DM some people like, hey man, like you got anything going on? And soon there usually is something going on. I mean, just like right here, I have a list of a bunch of stories that I'm working on for over the next 2-3 weeks or so. So, I mean, and usually that number of stories is what I'll get, I don't know, double the amount of time in the next 4 to 6 weeks. But because there's really nothing going on right now, it gives you more time to do storytelling, which is nice because, that's what I like to do.
Sure. And how much, you mentioned it briefly about analytics. How much does it help to have those engagements on your posts on Twitter or Instagram, especially when they're for your news organization?
Helps in what sense?
Just getting like retweets and followers, likes, shares, that kind of thing.
I mean, I've never been a real big person for the number of followers you have. That's just been my personal thing, because followers don't mean everything. It's about, to me, it's how many people are seeing your tweets. Because that, to me, if you have 300 followers, you could easily have something that gets 500,000 retweets. But if you have 500,000 followers, if you're not even getting 10 retweets, that says something about what you're tweeting. So to me, it's a meaningful tweet, because in a sense, a tweet to me is kind of like a miniature story. If you want that story to have a resonating impact, you want it to be good. That's where you get those 500,000 tweets. If you're only getting, let's say, 3 retweets per tweet, to me, like, this says something about you. If you have 1 billion followers, like, why is your miniature story not making a difference? Like, take a look at it. I mean, we have a little thing that we get like once a week that says, hey, this is the best performer on Twitter this month, blah, blah. It kind of turns like a little competition thing. Like, hey, this is the person leading in retweets over the past week, leading in replies, favorites, leading in impressions, whatever it might be, engagement rate. And that kind of keeps the newsroom, I guess, running in a sense. To just make each other's short story tweets a little better. I think engagement rate to me is probably one of the more important things, because if you have 500,000 followers, you're gonna have a lot of impressions. That's just someone looking at your tweet. To me, it's like you want to have an engagement rate of at least 3%. I mean, that's what I go for, and every now and again I'll fall below that. Most of the time I'm a pretty good amount above that. That's the biggest thing to me, just engagement rate, because that means people are clicking on your story, clicking on your profile from that tweet, whatever it might be. That to me is one of the more important things. Not that it's everything, because it's not, but to me, that says a lot about a person's social media abilities, what their engagement rate is.
Gotcha. And kind of zooming out a little bit on kind of the broad aspect of social media and journalism, can you describe the impact that social media has had on journalism as a whole in your mind? And, because of where we were before social media came to us, we were just doing print for the most part. And now it seems like journalism is consumed on a much bigger scale because of social media.
Especially from like a sports standpoint, I don't know how people really like found stories before. And it's like, yeah, like you could do beat calls. Like I've called up SIDs, hey, you got anything for me this week? And they could do that. But it's like almost all my stories I find on social media. And most of the people I interview, I've found them on social media. I have an interview set up for tomorrow, and I just DM'd him on social media. A lot of athletes will follow me back, like once I start covering them. And if I ever need something from them, like I want to do a story with them, I just DM them. I don't know how people did that without social media. I don't know how people found stories, or it's like, I guess you just have a Rolodex of phone numbers and you reach out to them like that. I don't know how they did it. They somehow did it. I think social media just makes things a lot easier, especially for Twitter. I can get the information I want there to get out there in what? It takes you 30 seconds to type a tweet. Whereas before that, you have to wait till your broadcast goes on TV or until the newsletter comes out. You really didn't have a way to get news out there before. Now I can get a story out there in 30 seconds, which is super convenient. More than half of my job, it feels like, is social media based. Even though, I have that story that's going to air. That story was either developed from, it was found on, or I set up context through social media. So in a sense, the story, and then the story after it airs is going on social media, because it's only going to go to air once or twice. And it'll go on the website. But it's going to go on social media, and that's the place that more people are going to see it.
But through that convenience, there's also the risk, obviously, of misinformation, like a typo or factual error. So what challenges do you think that presents with the convenience of social media?
To me, I've always been the biggest fan of get it right. Don't just do it for the speed. Obviously I've tweeted out things wrong with the wrong final score, blah, blah. But to me, what I usually tell new people that start here is get it right. Don't just get it fast. Make sure that you're not going to get called out on this or that, whatever. Obviously, a little mistake like the wrong score, people get that. If you typed a 3 instead of a 4, because they're right next to each other, everyone knows that. If you made that little mistake, someone will reply to you, hey, by the way, the score was this, or they'll just DM you, whatever. That stuff, yeah, it sucks. It's misinformation in a sense, but it is what it is. I don't think I've ever made as far as I remember, made the mistake of, actually getting a story wrong just because I rushed to it. But that's because, for me at least, I just make sure I have every little thing done and checked before I tweet about it. And that's, I think, the big thing of social media. A lot of people just try to get it first, which to me isn't right. Yes, I want to be first myself too, but I'd rather get it first and right than just first. I'd rather it even be you're the last one to tweet it and it's right than just get it first.
And with the protests and police brutality going on, there's been a huge increase in what's called citizen journalism, with ordinary people recording footage from their cell phones and submitting it, and then the companies get a hold of that and they broadcast it, share it, that whole thing. What is your opinion on that, on the increase of citizen journalism and of the concept itself? I know you don't really handle it too much with sports, but as a journalist, how do you feel about that?
Well, actually, because there's not been a ton of sports, I've been helping out protest coverage and coronavirus coverage when I can. I've helped out with 2-3 protest coverage now. It's fun from a sports perspective, just having that kind of change of pace, but that's a different story. But we don't use a whole lot of just video that people have shot if we don't know who they are. We have 3, 4 people, 5, 6 people. We know who they are. We brought them in and we've talked to them in person before all this started. We've known them for years. And if they send something to us, we can trust them. It's really just gonna be video, and then from that, we'll have to call police or whatever and say, hey, we have this video that's blah, blah, blah. What can you tell me about this? So we'll never just take a video and just air it like the person that did it, that the person that filmed it said happened like it's facts, because we don't know if it's facts. I mean, they're not trained journalists. They can be an accountant who just filmed something and sends it to us. We don't know, if they have an agenda. So if someone said something to us, we'll usually call up the appropriate channel and say, hey, we have this. What can you tell me about it? Or is this correct? Is this actually from here? Something might be from Spokane, or someone might say something is in Spokane, but really it's in Seattle that thing was filmed. We don't know. I don't know what every building in Spokane looks like. I wouldn't say I don't like it, because in a sense it's helpful that I don't have to, our news reporters don't have to be at every little thing all times of the day, because we have a certain amount of staff. We can't be everywhere. But I think if we get sent something in and we don't check it, that's a disservice. I think it's okay if you get something sent to you and you check it out, not just throw it on air. That's the thing. That's the part I'm not okay with. It has to be checked, because the person sending in, you don't know what type of agenda they have, even though you've talked to them multiple times and they sent them to you for years, like people that we'd have do that. We don't know if, they don't like Black Lives Matter, for instance, because a lot of stuff they sent us in the past isn't necessarily related to that. It's just a house fire, whereas they might not like Black Lives Matter. We don't know that, so we just have to check. So we've done a lot of that recently, is we've been sent stuff from protests or whatever, and we'll have to call police or whoever, the NAACP, up and say, hey, we have this video, like, can you verify this stuff for me? And if they say yes, it's a good video to air. If they say no, we won't air it. So I'm cool with video coming in. You just have to double check it.
Sure. And I've got one last question for you. I don't want to waste too much more of your time.
Okay.
Appreciate your time. But what do you think is the future of social media journalism, and what do you think it could look like a decade from now?
I don't know. As far as the broadcasting, I mean, we're starting to look into, at least like my company is, we're starting to look into a lot of, hey, how could we have things that are just on social media? Like, I know one of our sister stations, I think it's like every morning on weekdays, like 9 a.m. or something like that, they'll have like a 3-minute little morning update type of thing. They'll just do like 5, 6 news stories that are important, and it'll be on Instagram TV or Periscope or something like that on Facebook. And it's not something you're going to see on air. You're going to see the stories on air, but not in that format. I know a lot of TV stations are also looking at is ways of streaming, let's say like your 5 o'clock news show, stream it on Twitter or on Facebook, whatever it might be. And we've started looking into that. We've done that a few times for bigger stories. We've just rerouted some feeds and put the entire newscast on our Twitter page. To me, it's like, you think about where everything was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, when Twitter was just getting started out, you didn't see a ton of videos from stories on there. Now, I mean, half the tweets I'm seeing have a video attached to it, especially from news reporters and sports reporters. Half the tweets have stories attached to it, the story that went to air. I don't know where it's going to go 10 years from now. I mean, I can't imagine that it won't just get more useful. But I don't see it taking a step back. But I have no idea where it's going to go 10 years. I have no idea. I'd assume it's just going to get more useful, because, I mean, like that 10 years ago thing. 10 years ago, people were not DMing each other to set up stories. It wasn't happening. It might have been happening a little bit, but it wasn't really happening. Almost every sports reporter I know is DMing an athlete or a coach or whatever now, saying, hey, can we do a story tomorrow at this time? So I can't imagine I can only imagine that's going to get bigger.